Happy Not Carnival, y'all. Welcome. Come, whoever you are welcome here. No matter your age, your size, the color of your eyes, your hair, your skin, you are welcome here. No matter how you came here, if you came alone or with others, you're welcome here. No matter whom you love or how you speak or whatever your abilities, you are welcome here. Whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears in your eyes, you are welcome here. If you come with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands, you then are indeed welcome here. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of New Orleans. For almost 200 years, we have been the congregation with a beacon of liberal light, liberal spiritual self-fulfillment, and commitment to making our community and our world a better place. We try. And for those who celebrate Lent, we honor that. We are in the season of Lent, dust to dust. I am Beverly Rainbolt, and my pronouns are she, her, and y'all. And if you're a visitor, we'd like for you to raise your hand so that we can welcome you. I think I did see at least one visitor, maybe. Raise your, oh, yes, two, okay. We'd like to ensure that everyone in attendance can hear the service in its entirety, and if you're unable to hear any of the speakers, please wave or signal and we'll try to adjust our volume or our projection. If anyone of any age would like some activities, fidgets, or coloring pages or whatever that helps you focus on the service, there are pew packets in the back of the chapel. There are age ones, but you can decide what your age is this morning. And please help yourselves and then return them when the service is over. After the time for all ages this morning, children are welcome to stay in the chapel or to go into the kids' room where there will be an activity focused on our shared values. As a lay-led congregation, we invite a variety of worship leaders from our congregation and the broader community to give the sermon and contribute to other parts of the service. Our worship leader this morning is Justin Wolfe, and we're so glad to have him speaking this morning. We're so glad to have him speaking this morning rather than looking down at us from the balcony. And I'll let him tell you any biographical information he wants to share this morning. But now, if you would please rise with me in body or spirit, and join me in the words for lighting the chalice of, or join Justin in the words for lighting the chalice of our heritage. And those words you will find in your worship, in your order of worship.
Thank you, everybody. These words are from an essay by James Baldwin called Nothing Personal. So, one discovers the light in darkness. That is what darkness is for. But everything in our lives depends on how we bear the light. It is necessary while in darkness to know that there is a light somewhere, and to know that in oneself, waiting to be found, there is a light.
Please remain as you are and turn in your gray hymnals to number, turn the page, 101. It's Abide with Me. It's time for the Time for All Ages, but we don't appear to have a time for all ages. So if someone would like to come and tell us Time for All Ages, we'll invite that up. Otherwise, we'll tell two next week. We could. I will say, sorry, choir, if there are anyone who wants to go to the kids' room now or later, then Maddie will lead you back there. And you can think about it, and you can change your mind, whatever decision you make. Let me say one more bit of housekeeping on this post-carnival day. Maddie, would you just raise your hand, please, so that if the children want to go to the kids' room, they know who to talk to. I think there's a potential person close to you. And now it's yours. It's all yours.
Thank you. I realize I'm missing part of my script, which is the one that tells me the right words to say for the prayer that we're going to have before we enter into our time of contemplation. But suffice it to say, I'm going to offer a prayer, after which we'll sit quietly a few minutes to reflect on the words and on the prayers of your heart, after which we'll sing together, voice still and small. So the prayer is one I've said before. I come back to it over and over again. I think I love the words, and it seems as apropos of our time, the experience we have of this world today, as much as anything else. It's the United Farm Workers Prayer, written by Cesar Chavez. Show me the suffering of the most miserable, so that I may know my people's plight. Free me to pray for others, for you are present in every person. Help me to take responsibility for my own life, so that I can be free at last. Grant me courage to serve others, for in service there is true life. Give me honesty and patience, so that I can work with others. Bring forth song and celebration, so that the Spirit will be alive among us. Let the Spirit flourish and grow, so that we will never tire of the struggle. Let us remember those who have died for justice, for they have given us life. Help us love even those who hate us, so that we can change the world. Amen. So my reading is just a short excerpt from Hannah Arendt's Eichmann in Jerusalem. In 1963, Arendt covered the trial of the Nazi leader Adolf Eichmann, and at the end of the trial, Arendt reported one brief testimony about a man named Anton Schmidt, a sergeant in the German army, who, while in Poland, met members of the Jewish underground and decided to secretly supply them with forged papers and vehicles. Schmidt was eventually discovered and executed. Arendt wrote, "During the few minutes it took to tell of the help afforded by a German sergeant, a hush settled over the courtroom. It was as though the crowd had spontaneously decided to observe 2 minutes of silence in honor of the man named Anton Schmidt. And in those 2 minutes, which were like a sudden burst of light in the midst of impenetrable, unfathomable darkness, a single thought stood out clearly, irrefutably, beyond question. How utterly different everything would be today in this courtroom, in Israel, in Germany, in all of Europe, and perhaps in all the countries of the world, if only more such stories could be told. It was not that no one knew what was happening, even if they themselves were not participating in the slaughter. It was their silence, the acceptance that made the stories of people like Anton Schmidt seem impossible, but that also made such stories so vital. Under the conditions of terror, most people will comply, but some people will not. Humanly speaking, no more is required, and no more can reasonably be asked for this planet to remain a fit place for human habitation." So, I know a lot of you are probably taking a social media pause for Lent, and for good reason. You open your phone, and sometimes it feels like you're peering into the underworld. And I'll be the first to admit that I feel a deep, calming relief when instead up pops a video about the rescue of an abandoned dog, going from scared and emaciated to healthy and loved. But what's really grabbed me in recent months are the stories and videos from the streets of that underworld horror of people being good, decent, kind. Sometimes it's something small, like a police officer forcing an ICE vehicle to go around a crowd instead of through it, or people facing down ICE officers to surround and protect their neighbors, people helping their children's classmates make it safely from home, between home and school. For the last year, of course, we have mostly been subjected to a fire hose of news, with images of ICE and CPB and other agencies engaged in shocking behavior, in horrifying dehumanization, serving as shock troops for Stephen Miller's campaign of white supremacy nationalism, and constructing what feels like an unchecked institutional framework for secret policing and detention for whoever is next on the list of enemies. We live in a country whose foundational myths are so enticing that we want to believe that this is an aberration, that we might not always be good, but we have good intentions. But the evidence of our history makes this view hard to swallow. ICE forms part of a long, long lineage of American policing, just as Trump's foreign policy follows an equally long record of American imperialism, our long history of apologizing for The atrocities of our domination, when they stand naked before us, claiming, pleading that this is not who we are, except it is who we are, even if it is not who we always are. We have been socialized to justify inequality and domination, and then wonder why it happens. Our public culture has taught us to minimize and deflect, to throw our hands in the air and say, boys will be boys, or why did he resist? I know it's dark. It's going to get a little bit darker. I'm going to come out the other side. Consider the double horror of the Epstein files, the victimization of girls and young women on the one hand, and the way these powerful men talked about them with such casual contempt and dehumanization. It's one of the most grotesque expressions of the patriarchal socialization and violence so deeply rooted in American society. But it's hardly singular. What of the tens of thousands of rape kits that sit untested in police evidence warehouses? Or the bad girls whose parents sent them to state mental hospitals where they face sterilization and even sometimes lobotomization? Or if you haven't seen it, and I know it's a very hard when you hear the title, book to imagine reading, Stacey Patton's devastating new book on race hatred in the US called How White America Learned to Lynch Black Children, which explores, among other things, how children's play can normalize dehumanization. It's all part and parcel of what Hannah Arendt called in her searing analysis of the Holocaust, the banality of evil. It's not society's monsters who do these things. It's citizens who, in their everyday compliance with domination, carve the path to the underworld. But what of those who don't comply, of those who resist domination? Their actions are often so small, so decent, so dignified. I think about Renee Good's words to the ICE agent who would kill her less than a minute later. I'm not mad at you. Such a small thing. And it could have been all that there was. Just a moment when Renee Good tried to slow ICE's machinery of fear to be a presence. I'm not mad at you. In recent months, I've been thinking about the anonymous, ordinary people who, like Good, are trying to make the world a better place. These everyday people who engage in acts of kindness and bravery, each adding their small effort to tipping the balance against this onslaught of terror unleashed by our government. I've been holding these people and their light inside me. One of the small things that I take from social media, I can close my eyes and I feel their warmth. But in my mind's eye, their light has also been pointing me towards something buried in my psyche, a phrase, an idea. I see the words in my mind's eye, the righteous ones. And I hear my Father's voice, and he says, the Lamed Vov. These words come from one of my father's favorite novels, The Last of the Just, but also from his own complex relationship to the history of Jews and Judaism. In the mystical tradition of Hasidic Judaism, there is a term, tzadidik nistadim, which means the hidden righteous ones. It's believed that in each generation there are at least 36 people, such people, popularly known as the Lamed Vov, Lamed being the 30th and Vav the 6th letters of the Hebrew alphabet. There's a lot of interest in kind of mystical numerology and the like. that's not my interest here. But in any event, tradition has it that these 36, who are even unknown to themselves, serve as a kind of counterbalance to all the evil and injustice in the world. And I think about that and the implication, right, of the small things that the unknown do. Just 36. But of course, who knows who they are? Who are the Lamed Vov? Who are those righteous 36? You are the Lamed Vov. You are the righteous 36. And so are others. We don't know. All we know is what you do, how you act. The idea of the Lamed Vov, these righteous ones, serves as a through line in the novel, The Last of the Just, published in 1959 by Andrzej Schwarzbart, a Polish Jew whose family was killed in the Holocaust. The novel tells the story of a single family, the Levies, spanning 800 years, from 12th century England to the concentration camps in Auschwitz. And the story begins in 1190, when anti-Semitic rioters led a pogrom that eradicated York's entire Jewish community. Somehow, however, a single Jewish child survived, an infant son of the Levy family. In the family legend, the child's survival is a miracle. God fulfilling his covenant with Abraham by saving the child and marking him as a Lamed Vov, one of the hidden righteous ones. Schwarzbart explains the tradition like this. The world reposes upon 36 just men, the Lamed Vov, indistinguishable from simple mortals. Often they are unaware of their station. But if just one of them were lacking, the suffering of mankind would poison even the souls of the newborn, and humanity would suffocate with a single cry. For the Lamed Vov are the hearts of the world multiplied, and into them, and as into one receptacle, pours all of our griefs. From there, the novel continues, each generation of the Levy family, one child after another, inheriting the role, caught between a blessing and a curse, beloved by God, yet compelled to absorb the evil that washed over their world in the ceaseless currents of anti-Semitism. Judaism is suffused with stories of this paradox. In the midst of the novel, Schwarzbart recounts an 18th century Hasidic tale about the Lamed Vov. When an unknown just rises to heaven, the story goes, he is so frozen that God must warm him for 1,000 years between his fingers before his soul can open itself to paradise. Just think about that grief, that suffering, right, that's implied within that one person. And it is known that some remain forever inconsolable at the human woe they have experienced, so that God himself cannot warm them. So from time to time, the Creator, blessed be his name, sets forward the clock of the last judgment by 1 minute. The novel carries us forward, finally, to the life of Ernie Levy, whose life is extinguished in the gas chambers of Auschwitz. Ernie is the novel's titular, the last of the just. For Schwarzbart, like so many Jews of his generation, the Holocaust marked a turning point that upended Jewish history and the redemptive promise of God's covenant. How could anyone imagine that the Lamed Vov could bear the suffering and grief of 6 million murdered Jews, of the millions more the Nazis considered as deviant threats to their Aryan supremacy? One could take the novel as a story of nihilism, akin to doom scrolling through social media. But I would argue that this is the wrong reading. Rather, Schwartz-Bart is insisting that we cannot be saved by a righteous few. The world can only be saved by us, in our choices, in our actions, in our refusal to comply with the subjugation of others and ourselves, in our turn to good, not just good intentions. Schwartz was deeply influenced in his thinking by the Jewish theologian Martin Buber and the ideas of his most famous work, I, Thou. If you've ever tried to read I, Thou, it's not a straightforward text, and yet the core ideas are actually quite, I think, simple, straightforward, and wonderful. Buber argued that we live in the world in relation to the world in two different ways. The first he calls I, it. So I, my relationship to the world as it. This is a relationship we have with things in the world. Things we use, things we analyze, things we categorize. It is a relationship centered on our sense of ourselves as individuals in the world. It's a logic of survival, right, of supporting our individual needs. But Buber argues that this is in reality a logic of domination. We cannot avoid using power, he writes. We cannot escape the compulsion to afflict the world. It is a central element of I in the world. But Buber argues that this individualism has no meaning without others, that our lives have no real meaning outside of community, right? That what distinguishes us, my son is taking cultural anthropology right now, and I've been kind of reading his textbook alongside him, and early chapters are like, what makes human beings different from the hominids that we're a part of, right? The great apes and others. It's not language per se exactly. Other animals have forms of communication. But part of it is that we have an ability to tell stories, right, about the past, about the present, an imagining of the future. It's one of the things that distinguishes us, this storytelling capacity. And that storytelling capacity is a means for us to change, to carve out that future. But that language, that notion of a future, doesn't mean anything without other people. It doesn't exist without other people, right? Language doesn't exist without other people, and without that language, we don't become who we are. And so Buber says we struggle with our capacity, our inclination for domination in the small ways that we look at people but don't see them, hear people but don't listen, and in our much wider global social practices of slavery, colonization, occupation. We struggle against this to build real connection, to encounter people as themselves, not as an it, but rather as a you, or thou in his old-fashioned sense, right? This is the other relationship of how we live in the world. I, you. I, it. Separation, domination, subjugation. I, you. Connection. Love. An admittance that we cannot have real connection with people if it has to be understood as a connection of domination. And Buber says when we have this connection, when we bring I and you together, that we create something sacred in our everyday lives, right? That there is something sacred in the secular. That's all there is, right? Buber also coming in many ways out of this Hasidic tradition. The mundane, the everyday is such a powerful place. For him, that sacred, that moment of encounter is our proximity to God. But for me, it is the sacralization of our lives together as human beings. One of the things I love about being a you, right? Finding those wisdoms that we find out in the traditions of the world, but making of them what makes sense to us on our own path. We recognize in this encounter, I and you, our partialness, the spark of possibility and dialogue. It's not an end, it's an ongoing process, and it's fragile, right? Buber says our individualism is constantly asserting itself. It's seeking to pull us out of this relationship of I-you to the seeming security, the certainty of I-it. There is an ease in seeing the world as objects. True dialogue, true encounter, what we might call love, is hard. But it's in these moments, in the anonymous, ordinary righteousness of our choices, that we edge towards a different world, away from compliance to domination, and towards a mutual construction of love. Buber's writings transformed Schwarzbart's thinking. The way in which he thought about Jewish history, a history that in his own experience had been suffused with pain and horror. I don't know, have any of you read The Last of the Just? It ends, there's it ends with the end, right? How do you recover from that end? How do you recover from surviving when everything else comes to an end? There's this potential to be drowned in it, right? And in that drowning, perhaps to seek the security of relationships of it, but which Buber would say, and Schwarzbart will argue, is really just the reproduction of that same history over and over again. Schwarzbart didn't want to ignore that history or erase it, but he wanted to subsume it into a different kind of narrative, a different story, a story that could be productive, a story that could break the bonds of subjugation. And he did this by bringing himself back to a much older story, the story of Exodus, of Jewish escape from slavery in Egypt, of their resistance to that domination, of their forging of a new path. This reframing took on an even deeper meaning during his early post-war life in Paris. This is something I encountered as I was reading more about him, trying to actually, in some ways, just get a little closer to my father, who loved this novel, but which I had never read while he was alive. But what I learned is that when he was living in Paris while writing this novel, he was living in a community surrounded by French Caribbean immigrants, mostly from Guadeloupe, some from Martinique. And he made friends, and he learned their history of African slavery and French colonialism. And it was through these friendships, through these conversations, that he came to understand that Exodus was a part of their story too. But it was not the same story. It was a particular story, but with a shared foundation. And he became acutely aware that his story of the Levy family, which could trace its genealogy back 1,000 years, was something that his Guadeloupean friends did not have. They had been torn from their families. Their stories could not be told in the same way. Their history had been cut off. But the history of slavery, of social death, of being othered, that they shared. And it helped Schwartzbart understand domination not just as a Jewish experience, which was how he had always understood it, but rather as one that was more universal, even and always understood in its particularity. Not the same, right, yet shared. That is the essence of dialogue, Schwartzbart wrote. The essence of dialogue is not the universal ideas that interlocutors hold in common, nor the ideas that one has of the other, but in the encounter, in the invocation, in the power of the I to say you, right? So not to make his West Indian friends an example of his experience, not to imagine their experience in his own, right? But to love, to take seriously them as people in the world with their own long history of subjugation, of horror, a thing that they could see in one another, and in that seeing, move beyond. But that moving beyond is always still tied to that history. And that's the thing that's kind of, I think, so important here. In many ways, histories of redemption or stories of redemption suggest a kind of escape from the past. And Schwartzbart and Buber and others would say there's no escape from that past. It is what we experienced. It is what taught us. But what did it teach us? What is it teaching us? Sorry, I need a page that I moved. Here. So I want to return just for a minute to the reading from Hannah Arendt, right? Under conditions of terror, most people will comply, but some people will not. The story of Anton Schmidt for her is the sudden burst of light in the midst of impenetrable and unfathomable darkness. Baldwin says, everything in our life, in our lives, depends on how we bear the light. It is necessary, while in darkness, to know that there is light somewhere, to know that in oneself, waiting to be found, there is a light. want to conclude with just a little story from Buber from another book of his, much less well known unless you're a kind of Jewish theology scholar. But in 1947, just at the end of World War II, Buber published a collection of stories and legends from the history of that 18th century mystical Jewish tradition called Hasidism. And in it, he recounts the last moments in the life of Rabbi Zusha, one of the Hasidic movement's earliest leading lights. And looking back upon his life and imminent passing, he told his students, "In the coming world, they will not ask me, 'Why were you not Moses?' They will ask me, 'Why were you not Zusha?'" This is not to say that you or me or anyone else is expected to carry the world on our shoulders, to lead people out of slavery, to lead them to the promised land. But that is not the same thing as not being responsible to others, to our community, to strangers. We cannot fully be ourselves if we are not honest with ourselves, honest about ourselves. When we seek to forge the sacred in our secular lives, when we strive for the I, thou, or I, you, in the place of I, it, we are building a world called love. You don't have to be Moses. You just have to be yourself, truly, truly yourself. So may we be. Amen.
So mote it be, and blessed be. Generosity is one of our shared UU values, or our UU shared values. As UUs, we agree to cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We understand that generosity is a spiritual discipline that connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. We can practice our act of generosity either by placing an offering in the collection plate as it comes by, or by using the information in your order of worship, the QR code, to make a digital donation. That was quite perfect, Dwayne. Gifts to this community of faith are gratefully received. Let us acknowledge these gifts by reading together the words from your order of worship. This gift from the abundance of my life blesses me, our ministries, and the world. Giving in the offering plate and pledging are part of the stewardship of this congregation, but there are many ways to stewardship the work that we do. Here are some of the opportunities. I'll remind you that when you get home, you can take your bulletin with you, your order of worship. This QR code on the right is a list of our announcements. Also, you can look at our digest that would have dropped into your mailbox if you're on the list at 5 o'clock on Friday for more detailed information. In the meantime, we are still collecting diapers and cooking oil for our vulnerable neighbors, and you can bring those here, or you can talk with Barrett, I think, who is in charge of that. Our Mardi Gras fundraiser. First of all, a huge thank you to everyone who helped make our Mardi Gras fundraiser a success, and special thanks to Ann McLean, who shepherded that through. And what a job. Special thanks. Would you like to know? They're still playing with the numbers, but we stand to clear $3,000 to $4,000. So yay, and yay, everything. Also, Ann tells me that things got left behind, like glasses and things. So if you are missing something and you were here and you might have left it here, talk to Ann. Okay, this is a little off. Y'all are going to be not know about this. Okay, with the members who have attended either the Aiming for Allyship training or the Sacred Reckoning training, either stand up or raise your hands, please. I want people to know who, and I'm raising my hand here. There are like 7 of us, Linda, is that 7 or 8 of us? Yeah, okay, so the next 3 announcements pertain to those 2 trainings and the people that have taken those trainings who are working together as a group. So if you want more details about any of them, talk to one of these people. There's a Reparations Learning Lab webinar this Wednesday at noon. That's brought to you by the same people that do the Sacred Reckoning. They are doing a deep dive into the doctrine of discovery, which is kind of the basis for white supremacy, and I have learned more than I ever knew in those trainings, and I'll be in that webinar at noon. If you're able to go, talk to Linda. Also, the Aiming for Allyship training, which meets for 5 or 6 Tuesday nights in a row. Thursdays, that's right, Thursdays. In fact, I'm going to let you go a little bit more into detail about that as you also come up here and talk about something else. But while you're walking up, I'm going to tell you that next Sunday is our monthly anti-racism, anti-oppression ongoing conversation. It'll be in the chapel at, 15 after we've had coffee next Sunday. And Linda, I'm going to let you take the other one. Pardon? Oh, yes. Yes, it is important. Thank you, Margot. New secretary on the job. 2 weeks from today, we have a congregational meeting, and we also have, a part of that meeting is an amendment to the bylaws. Our current bylaws say that you have to have 30 people or 30%, whichever is higher, present to have a quorum. And we want to lower our expectations on that a little bit. So that'll come out in your email later today probably, but 2 weeks from today is the meeting. Okay, thank you. All right.
So the anti-racism training that several of us have been to from the, thank you, from DRUM, which is Diverse and Revolutionary Unitarian Universalist Multicultural Ministries, puts on, is coming up, a new session. So if you're interested, then you can see one of us and we'll give you the details. The church will pay for your attendance in that. And we want as many people in the congregation to be involved and to understand that and to do the work themselves so that they can bring that in the work that they do in the world and in our congregation. So that's coming up, and the deadline for registering is May 5th, and there's not a lot of slots left. So if you're interested, please talk to one of us. I'm sorry, March 5th. Yes, thank you. Also, I wanted to tell you of an event next Saturday that the UU Service Committee and our FUUNO's social justice team is co-hosting, and it is at 2 o'clock in the fellowship hall. I think it's 2 to 4, and it's called Y'all Means All, Practicing Radical Hospitality Through the Storm, basically talking about how we can all prepare for hurricane season in a way that doesn't leave any of our siblings behind, and doing things in solidarity with each other, and thinking about and talking about what different people's needs are. And just to let you know that there's going to be an awesome panel that is going to be part of that, speaking to their experiences of folks directly impacted by racism, ableism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, and other oppressions. Annette Hollowell, Shauna Turner, Martha Aguilera, and Jenna May. You'll get a packet of resources for you that will help you be able to be involved in this work. So it should be pretty amazing to be in that conversation. So you can see me afterward about signing up, and I'll leave a little flyer at the back also. And in the digest is more information so that you can do that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. At this time, I invite you to stand in body or spirit and join with us as we extinguish our chalice. The words are in your order of worship. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And I can't believe we're already at the closing hymn, but here we are. Please remain as you are, and we will sing from the Teal hymnal, number 1021, Lean on Me.
Friends, thank you. I offer a benediction from Kathleen McTeague. May the light around us guide our footsteps and hold us fast to the best and most righteous that we seek. May the darkness around us nurture our dreams and give us rest so that we may give ourselves to the work of our world. Let us seek to remember the wholeness of our lives, the weaving of light and shadow in this great and astonishing dance in which we move. So may it be. Amen. Please greet your neighbors with love, with seeing you, and then you can get some coffee.